that, I want to welcome on stage our host of this fireside chat. Q Harrison Terry has been a returning Techsylvania guest, so I'm really, really honored that we have him back. He is a remarkable background and just like a mind-blowing person. He is an entrepreneur and a marketeer. He is a growth marketeer at Mark Cuban Companies, where he advises and assists portfolio companies with their marketing strategies. He's really has a long list of accomplishments. He's previously led marketing at Redox, and he has been featured in many publications, the Huffington Post. He's a regular speaker at CES, South by Southwest, TEDx. So he's going to moderate that panel, and then we're going to have, if the clicker allows, and then we have also Joe Inzerillo. He's an esteemed leader in media technology and an executive vice president, chief product and technology officer for SiriusXM. For those of you who don't live in the US, SiriusXM is massive there. It's the biggest satellite radio. He's driving the product roadmap, satellite infrastructure and enhancements to the technology to foster innovation and propel growth. And I'm really looking forward how they're gonna explore digital transformation and how they how SiriusXM really accelerated their digital growth. Please welcome Q Harrison and Joe on stage. Thank you so much, both.
A pleasure, a pleasure. What's up, y'all? How y'all living? Come on, I need more energy. I'm not about to interview Joe to a whack-ass crowd. Come on, turn it up, turn it up. This is Romania, right? This is Romania, right? Cluj? Is Cluj in the building? Joe, if we were on the radio, I don't know if we would cut it. This is not the audience we need.
No, that's true.
I mean,
we probably should have got a warm-up act or something like that.
Let's try something else. If I was on SiriusXM, what would the ad sound like if I was about to interview Joe?
Would interview me?
Yeah.
It'd be, we have a sleep channel that we run at night, so it'd be get ready to tuck in and go to bed.
Get ready to tuck in. We just did quantum computing. Now you want to go to bed? No.
No, next time we're going to bring some talent. That's it. We need
take a seat. Get cozy, man. This is going to be a fun conversation. So, how many in here actually know what satellite radio is? Just raise your hand. We can see you. We got a couple over here, a couple over there.
Mostly my team over here.
That's your team? Yeah. Oh, you paid for those people to be here?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You don't wait. You don't.
No. Man. I mean, okay, all right, cool. So. Let's actually start off there. Satellite radio, it's come a long way. I remember it being the most instrumental asset in a car. Growing up, the satellite radio was aspirational. People my mom would be like, "No, I'm not buying that car if it didn't have SiriusXM." Right. Yeah. And I remember when Oprah Winfrey had got her channel on SiriusXM, and then now, dude, you've got so many different types of talent on the platform, but one of the things, Drake has a channel on there. Yeah, that Drake is big, and then you've got a few others. But I don't want to talk about the talent today. I want to talk about the tech. And so the question I have for you is, how have you seen the transformation of radio and just the household? Because we went from terrestrial radio, which is AM, FM, and that was the generative AI technology of its time. Having connection to the radio or having a box that allowed for just countless innovations to take place as it relates to human communication. But when you introduce it on the scale of satellite, that opened up the door to a lot more opportunities as it relates to growth. And I'm curious just to see how you all view that internally before we get into the conversation.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, for those folks, satellite radio never really caught on in Europe, I think partially just because you need scale. Satellites are really expensive. By the time you build one and launch it, it's almost $1 billion to put one of those in orbit, and we have 5 of them just to serve North America. And then you got to get the hardware in the car.
You should talk Elon out of that.
Yeah, SpaceX actually launches our birds.
Okay, got it. So don't do that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's really expensive. There's a big barrier of entry. But in the U.S., to your point, you had AM/FM, which is really sort of what's popular in Europe, similar sort of things, but back 20 years ago, we really wanted to revolutionize that. And the U.S. is very big, and we have a lot of very rural areas and a lot of very urban areas, and we needed to sort of solve both of those. And our original tagline was kind of radio coast to coast, so you could get in your car and drive from one side to the other and actually hear content that you loved. And we made it premium and wanted to make it premium because there was also a bunch of rules, like the FCC, which is like the government agency regulates frequency. You can't swear, you can't do this, you can't do all that stuff. And so we wanted to have it be more open and like get more opinions and things like that. And so by making it premium, it got us out of that. It was a premium service. So you could have somebody like Howard Stern. Some of you may know who he is, some of you may not.
For sure.
But you could have controversial stuff. You could play the uncensored versions of songs, all that type of thing. And so we put it together, and it was very popular, and it's a massive business. So we're about a $9 billion business, $9 billion turnover in terms of scale, and it was very popular. But it was one of those models that, at this point in time, is under assault from a bunch of other transformative technologies. So if you look at the Spotifys, the Apple Musics, et cetera, streaming audio has become a big thing. And I liken it to, before I got to SiriusXM, I was with Disney.
Right.
And so I went to Disney. I did 5 years with Disney, and I was there to build Disney Plus and all the streaming applications. And it was the same sort of thing. Like, Disney is a huge company, but most of the money, there's stuff comes from the parks, but a lot of it comes from movies, and a lot of it comes from television.
Right.
And those were two models that were also under assault. So Disney needed to become a streamer in order to get the content that they had been producing to the people who wanted it. Sirius needs to also become a streamer so that we can go other places.
So I want to actually jump back to your experience really quick, and then I'm going to come back to SiriusXM. You're at Disney. Transformational product to go from an entertainment company like theme parks. I mean, who here likes Disney movies, been to a Disney World, Disney Park?
But by the way, Star Wars and Marvel count in that, so like you can
yeah, there we go. We got some fans. Now you go from that to saying we're going to bet it all on streaming, even taking actual movies that are set to be released for theatrical release and taking them to this platform that you would go and head up the growth. You've got this big brand, which is Disney. It's a behemoth, lots of money to throw at. Transitioning from Disney to Sirius, I don't think it's the same. Like, you've got a brand, but like it's definitely not Disney. So how do you think about the growth, and what's the through line that you've been able to just see where you're like, okay, some fundamentals don't change. You have to get this right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously Disney is massive. The stakes were incredibly high. When we came in, I was a co-founder of a company called BAMTech, which was a carve-out from Major League Baseball of all places, which is another whole story we won't go into. But when Disney brought us in, people, before they made the acquisition of BAMTech, people kind of laughed at Disney being a streamer. They were like, yeah, right, they're going to catch Netflix. Yeah, not a shot in hell. Right. But once we came in, and there were still skeptics for sure. A lot of haters, a lot of skeptics. But
and then you bought Hulu, right?
Yeah, we bought Hulu. That was after we launched Disney Plus. But yeah, we bought Hulu too, ultimately, or bought controlling interest of Hulu.
Right.
But when we launched Disney Plus, we went from 0 to 100 million paying subscribers in 16 months. And so it was a meteoric rise. And now when you read any article about streaming, you hear Netflix and Disney mentioned in the same breath.
1,000%.
But it wasn't like that before.
I remember.
But the through line, I think, to me, was that Bob Iger realized that he had to reinvent the business and he had to do it quickly.
Right.
And I forget who said it, but I think it was somebody from Netflix that was like, Netflix needed to become Disney, and then therefore Disney needed to become Netflix. And it was a race to see who could do which. Looking at the stock price, Netflix may have won that, at least for right now, but I think ultimately Disney...
Y'all fought a hostile takeover, though, so you can't count that.
No, but when you look at it, though, Disney is in a radically different spot than a lot of the other folks that are out there.
1,000%.
The thing that interested me about Sirius from an audio standpoint is we talk about SiriusXM, the radio product, but we don't talk about all the other stuff that we own. So, for example, we own Pandora. Some folks, used to be in Europe, perhaps at some point might be in Europe again. But we own Pandora. We own this company called AdsWiz that a lot of the team here that's actually based, technology is based in Bucharest.
Make some noise for that. Romania in the
Bucharest,
building.
Hometown crowd. But that's one of the largest audio ad insertion companies in the world. Depending on which you look at, we're number 1 or 2 in podcasts in the world.
Okay.
So we have a lot of other media assets, similar to Disney, where we had Marvel and Star Wars and all these things. And you're right, it's a smaller scale, but the journey is exactly the same, which is how do we transform ourselves so we don't lose who we are, but at the same time become very competitive with these other services.
That's fair. So when I think about that, like, we're in an era where there's a ton of hype cycles. We just got out of the crypto hype cycle not too long ago. I'm sure you got tons of blockchain pitches. And then now we're in the generative AI hype cycle. I mean, most people are, you've seen the work that's going on in AI with music.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on that? Like, can we just have AI powered stations in the future? Like, do you even need broadcasters?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that there's no question AI is already in the music industry.
Right.
People don't understand it, but when they go to mix songs and things like that, there's a computer sitting right there that they're using to do a lot of the enhancement, and things that used to be done by an army of sound engineers are now being done by a computer that's running an AI model. Mm-hmm. So it's been in music for decades, people working on things like that. But I think when you talk about art, it's a little bit different than talking about science, right? Like at some point in time, when you play this song and you go into the next song, there's no empirical right or wrong. Like this song always should be played after this song. It's artistic, and it depends on you and me. Even if we hear the same song, what comes next may be very different, likely is very different for everybody in the room. And so I think when you start talking about art, I think computers have a long way to go before they have art. And you hear that with the AI-generated stuff where there's sort of two flavors of it. One that's imitating somebody. So like, a while ago, probably, 7 months ago, there was the Oasis album going around that they created. It sounded cool, sounded like Oasis. Wouldn't have been anything if they hadn't trained it on Oasis, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they made something new. They made something highly derivative that sounded right, and then people thought it was cool. And it is cool, but it's not original.
Right.
And then you hear a lot of stuff that is more original, but it's also very derivative sounding. So despite a bunch of prompt engineering, you get very similar sounding results along. So I think that in the artistic field, you have to really get to AGI, I think, before you really get the artistic side, which is not to say that generative isn't super, super important. And so I think using it for things like what should the next song be, very important, or understanding music at a fundamental level.
Which it's great at, by the way, right? You can use any of the LLMs to make a playlist for you.
Totally.
And as long as it's not like very new music, like the underground stuff, it's going to do decent.
Yeah, it does okay. I mean, I think that AI's, I think the way that it does a good job with it is exactly what the other speakers were talking about, where it was statistical.
Yes.
It's like what thing is going to come next. So it's pretty good at that mathematically. It's not entirely personalized. So it's probably like if you were going to make a playlist for a radio station where it was one to many, it's probably pretty good.
Okay.
But if we're going to make a radio station that's for you,
right,
it's probably not real good.
It's missing some key data points there.
Missing some key data, and also just the pathways are not designed for that, right? So you'd have to do so much tuning on a model to get there.
And I want to bridge off of that, right? I think that's synonymous with your journey with Sirius, where you all survived the terrestrial radio to satellite radio transition pretty well. Mm. And, the vehicle was the great growth driver there. Yep. Getting the consumer at the point of purchase of a new vehicle, getting that lock in, and then just kind of being a part of that growth loop. Like once my mom got addicted to Sway in the morning,
right,
it was no letting her go. And she's complaining if the satellite radio doesn't work.
Right.
But then when you shift from like the listening experience being driven by a person being in the vehicle to now this global world where we've got apps and we can stream to our AirPods, whatever. What does that look like for you? Because it fundamentally changes. It's not even the same sales cycle. You have to go and think about the customer experience first, and the channels change. So what is Sirius doing to be ahead of that curve?
No, I mean, I think it's an astute observation. I think, when you think about it 20 years ago, the satellite radio was probably the first paid audio subscription that you ever had.
Yeah.
Like nobody came in with another paid audio subscription.
Mark Cuban would say broadcast.com.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah.
But nobody really had like an existing subscription. Now, if you're, let's say, under 40, it certainly wasn't your first subscription if you had a Sirius subscription, but most likely you're coming in with a canon of, I'm a Spotify person or Apple Music or YouTube Music or whatever it is, or maybe all of them depending on your mood. So it is different. We have to engage differently. So it's not just modifying the product, it's sort of modifying everything around the product, like our engagement model. And so that's part of the transition that we're really in the throes of right now. But I think what's imperative about what you just said is, at the end of the day, going back to Disney, not to make too many comparisons, but Disney succeeded because of the content. The tech was there to make that work, and make it work effortlessly, make it work in a way that people expected, etc. And so you could do tech wrong, and you will ruin the content side of it. But you could do tech really right, and if you don't have the goods, it doesn't matter.
That makes sense.
And so for us, I think, you're right that there's a lot of challenges. The flip side is there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay.
So for example, like in Europe, we never launched a satellite service because by the time we put up, $3, $4, $5 billion worth of satellites and got all the cars wired up and all that, that's a 10-year cycle to do. So it's just really expensive. But now I could stream to a car.
Because you got Pandora.
Right. Well, Pandora and potentially even the streaming version of SiriusXM in a car, potentially. So there's all sorts of things that go. And, one of the things about radio, especially hosted radio, like when you talk about Sway, hosted radio works really well in a car because you're generally alone.
It's an intimate experience.
Right. And you want to be not just entertained, but you actually want to make a connection with that host. And that companionship's really interesting. It also is kind of the same thing when you're cooking by yourself, right? So there are all these other kinds of use cases that manifest that relationship. And then also we need to be there, hey, let's turn off the DJ. I'm having a party. I love this station. Let's turn off the DJ for right now because I just want the music. So there's tons of opportunity as well.
So you mentioned cooking. That implies a little bit that you're going to get into the visual side of things then too?
Well, I mean, look, I definitely think visuals are a part of any audio experience right now.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean full-on video, right? So, you could be cooking and have album art up.
Okay.
You can have, Apple Vision Pro, for example, was one of the last projects I worked on at Disney. And, Disney was a launch partner with Apple. And if you haven't seen the Disney implementation, it's pretty fantastic. I think Disney really leaned in. And I was there for the early part of that. But, Apple Vision Pro is a great example of, you might have the recipe over here, and you're listening to the audio, and you're cooking, and you're putting the salt in, and the Vision Pro AI at some point is like, nope, not that much salt,
I mean, to use a tech term, it's a multimodal experience for the human, right?
100%. But, one of the things that we're thinking about is it's different, right? If I have it on my phone, there may be one thing. If I'm, in, let's say, an Alexa in the kitchen where I'm cooking, different thing. Or on a 10-foot UI where I have a party, I might not just want an album art. I might want pictures of the band. I may want live concert, photos and things like that.
So as a geek, I'm always thinking about scale and transformation, right? And you've got this interesting viewpoint where you actually get to see the entire tech stack and drive the innovation in the team. So what are you doing on the infrastructure side to make that dream a reality?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is start over, quite honestly.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I mean...
Throwing it all out.
I mean, the thing about it is, I say this all the time, it is fundamentally incompatible to be a technologist and averse to change. But when you're in the technology world, you meet all of these people that are averse to change, right? Where they're like, oh, no, this is the way we do it.
And it's legacy tech.
Right. It's so I think that what you have to do is you have to understand, fall in love with the process. And so all those learnings that we have are great. But at some point, you say, look, a bunch of this stack was designed before cloud existed, certainly designed before generative AI existed. And why do I think I'm going to be able to get there? By modifying this old thing. So when I say start over, I really do mean okay, learn everything that you've learned and then make a new version of it that is appropriate for there. And if you do that frequently and you get good at doing it, the switching cost isn't high.
That's fair.
So most people that don't take that approach, where they don't every 2 or 3, 4 years try to reinvent their stack, wind up with, oh my God, it's so hard to reinvent a stack. Well, yeah, because you accrued 15 years of tech debt before you tried to do it. If you do it all the time, it's actually not so bad.
So let's talk about that. You've got your team here. What are they working on?
This team really is focused on our ad products. And so AdsWiz serves not only our first-party Pandora products, but we serve it for a whole bunch of other clients around the world. And, we're growing, double digits a year.
And so when you think about innovation there, you're starting the entire chain of development over when you have a major lifecycle development?
I think you have to start with it. So, when I think about AdsWiz as an example, I see a lot of stuff in the audio market where it is going to converge like the video market did. Okay. So when I look at it, I feel like I've seen the movie, I read the book and now I'm watching the movie. It'll be a little different, but kind of directionally correct. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to get ahead, not just, okay, do the same thing over again, but where is this going and thinking ahead of that. And Gen AI, I think, is a great example of, a lot of people are like, look, I am 100% on the oh boy, there's a lot of hype. Yeah. But I'll tell you, we have a synthetic virtual agent with a company called Sierra AI that was founded by Brett Taylor, former CTO of Facebook and Meta, former co-CEO of Salesforce. And Clay Baver, who was in charge of AI research before, I forget the guy who was just mentioned, is now the guy of AI research at Google. And they have a product out, and it's in production talking to customers. And it is way better than your baseline customers today. Right now, we're doing that. The reason we were able to get there, and we were a launch partner with Sierra AI, is because we had the tech stack to do it.
Got it.
If I had been on my old tech stack, they would have been like, you know what, we're moving on, we'll come back after, you guys have straightened this out.
One of the things that I see in Eastern Europe that is just super vibrant is the desire to develop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dev shops here. There's a lot of innovative solutions as to how you can implement tech. How do you think about adding those members to your team? Like you've got obviously the ad tech team, but you've got multiple units that you're going to be developing for. Mm-hmm. What could a young developer in this room, or even an aspiring developer to work with someone like your statute, what could they do to get on your horizon?
Well, I mean, first off, I agree with you 100% about Europe and specifically Eastern Europe. We have teams in Warsaw, we have teams in Amsterdam, London. Ireland is just opening up. And so I think Europe in general, and definitely Eastern Europe, there's amazing amounts of talent. I think back to the falling in love with a process as opposed to falling in love with the technology. I think what I see is that there's a lot of folks that get super frothy about this particular technology. Like this is the one language to rule them all. It's all about Python. Python is, and look, Python's a great language and a lot of people use it. You have to be good with it.
But there's Go.
And there's Go and there's a bunch of other stuff, right? There's Quick,
Java.
like all this stuff. So ultimately what I would say is you have to be a technologist first and then a specialist second. So if you learn about technology, you learn how to learn about technology as it evolves, you could do some really cool things.
But how do they get your attention? You're in New York, and you're worried about this transformation. Yeah. This team, they're technologists. They're thinking about it. How do they get on your radar?
Well, I mean, I think two things. First off, I think for me and my team, one of the reasons I'm here, because I spend some time in the Bucharest office, and is I think good technologists in the States need to put feet on the ground in these other places. So part of it is just being here and talking to people. And I had some conversations last night with some folks that we're going to give a look to. So I think participating in events like this is good, and I think you're seeing more gravity of people coming over from the States. Obviously you look at some of the sponsors here, they're not Romanian sponsors, they're global sponsors. So I think participating in these communities, I'm a big fan of we're a pretty big Scala shop as an example right now, and so going to the Scala meetups, going to things like that, because it's not just about meeting me, it's about meeting my engineering teams that go to all these different conferences that are enthusiasts of a particular technology or things like that. I think being part of that ecosystem is the best way you ingratiate yourself. And then all of a sudden, you're talking to somebody who works on my team or something like that, and you're like, yeah, I love Scala and I like music and all that. And it's like, oh, shit, we're hiring. You should come over here.
All right, so I think we got time for 2 more questions. Let's keep the answers a little brief, but I'm going to put you in the hot seat here.
Okay.
So the first question I have is, you said you love technologies. We're both future thinkers. Let's throw generative AI and AI out the window. We know that that's a big technology. What's an emerging technology that is captivating to you, that's back in the mind, that you think, in the back of your mind, that you think is going to change the entertainment industry at large? And it's keeping you up at night, or you're thinking about it passively. What's one of those technologies? I
mean, I think MBI. So we heard a little reference, but machine brain interface, right?
Yes.
So the ability to directly interface with the brain kind of bypasses all this crap that we have right now. So whether it's a satellite radio or a TV or things like this, we're trying to get information in. So when you can fully synthesize an environment with an interface where you just put a hat on or whatever it's going to look like, I think that's the thing that's going to be truly transformational and truly immersive.
It's interesting because audio is actually the closest thing to that, right?
Yeah.
You have the cochlear implants and other devices. Are you having any developments or experiments in that capacity?
I mean, not with Sirius. I definitely have a lot of friends, talk to a lot of people.
Okay.
I've definitely done some consulting about some of what we were seeing before, like the generative AI signal filtering type stuff I've done work on. When I was Chief Technology Officer for baseball, we did a bunch of stuff of the neurocognitive plasticity, which is we heard about as well from Nina. And so I do sort of consult, and I think it's a really interesting field. I think especially for people with disabilities. I think there's an enormous amount of work, and trying to give back to that community is pretty important.
All right, so now I'm going to shout out to all the creatives and artists in the industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a turbulent time to be in music, to be a musician. It's really hard to compete. I mean, you can try to play the Spotify game and get numbers, but you can get removed at any time.
No doubt.
It's really hard to get into the radio circuits because the labels have basically bought up all the slots and placements. So if you were a young artist and you wanted to break through and you had an arsenal of your ads platform or other understandings, what would you do? And like, how would you give hope to the creators? Because you don't exist without the future of creators.
No, I agree. I mean, I'll tell you, one of my heroes in this sort of space, guy who I think has really done an amazing job is will.i.am. So for those, will.i.am was member of the Black Eyed Peas, is a member of the Black Eyed Peas. We're doing some collabs with him, and he's a huge technologist. And so he's one of the people that's not running away from the technology, he's running to it. So he has a show on SiriusXM now where it's a talk show where he interviews people, artists and things like that, and it's him, a comedian, and an AI.
Oh, wow.
And the AI is actually like participating in the interview process. And, sometimes it's incredibly profound and insightful, but when it goes off the rails, it's pretty funny.
Okay.
And that's what the comedian's there is to tease that out. But like, I think when we talk about it is, distribution's important, you have to do all this, but I also think it's like, it's sort of like this generation that we're in right now, the will.i.ams of the world, came of age at the internet. And part of the reason they are who they are is they knew how to use the internet.
That's fair.
So this generation right here, all these folks here, the young ones that are in the audience, things like AI, all that, they're of that generation. So use it. Go out and make it part. Don't run from it. Don't be scared of it. Just use it and command it as a weapon, not something that's going to smite you, right? And that's, I think, will.i.am.
Joe, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.